on every confession that I get, there's a little compliance box, and if there are any kind of warnings or anything that have to be read out, there's usually a little bit there, and this one just has an X next to it.
Is it symbols only? Do they put, or words?
Well, I think that's overstating it. I think there's a PG certificate for this if you're eating.
Okay, not X-rated.
Definitely not X-rated because they go on the Confessions podcast. But this is PG, but probably only if you're feeling sensitive or if you're eating or preparing food.
Okay, I'm feeling good. No food in front of us, Bobby.
Go for it.
We're good.
This comes from Brian. Thank you, Brian. Father Simon and his dedicated disciples. I am a state-registered paramedic, and I seek forgiveness for an incident which happened on a fateful day in 2001. I was preparing for my forthcoming night shift and was looking for something to eat to line my stomach when I came across some homemade parsnip soup, which went down a treat, accompanied by some thick toast with butter. You may well be ahead of me already. I started my shift about an hour later, and we were busy right away. A couple of hours into the shift, my parsnip soup began to, shall we say, make itself known. My colleague in the ambulance initially found this amusing, but was soon opening the windows and complaining about pretty much everything. I have to admit I was struggling and trying to find occasions where I could get relief without offending anyone or causing myself embarrassment was getting increasingly tricky. Am I being appropriately delicate? We continued to be busy until about midnight, when we were instructed to return to the ambulance station to stand by. We were grateful to get the opportunity to have some rest and a much-needed cup of coffee. As I'd upset my colleague most of the night already, I decided to take my coffee outside as it was a nice summer evening. I went to a fire exit at the side entrance of the station, away from the main road. On the other side, now this layout is important here. On the other side of the fire door, there was a shrub-lined path that led immediately left, but then after 10 feet bent right to meet a public footpath. The door itself was screened from the path by several tall shrubs. You'll see in a minute why these details are important. I was enjoying the peace and quiet, but it wasn't long before my parsnip soup was preparing another announcement. However, as I was well away from anyone else, I thought I wouldn't be bothering anyone, so I allowed the announcement to proceed. With me?
Yes.
Yep, totally there.
However, no sooner had I past wind than I heard a shrill scream coming from the other side of the shrubs. The scream in turn made me jolt, resulting in my hand getting scalded by my coffee. And because of the pain, I let out a small yell, which was received by more screaming from the other side of the shrubs, which was then followed by the sound of scampering. What on earth was going on? A moment later, I heard rustling, followed by more screaming, and then pleas for help. Well, I didn't know what to do or what had happened, but I knew that my hand was burning. However, if I came out from behind the shrubs, whoever I'd scared would know it was me who caused the alarm. So thinking on my feet, I went back into the fire door and closed it gently. I then found my colleague and told them that I was nipping to the shop for some chocolate. And running out of the main entrance, I could faintly hear someone yelling for help. As quickly as I could, I made my way to the side of the ambulance station where the noise was coming from. And as I turned the corner, I saw a woman's legs sticking out from the shrubbery, her top half embedded in the thick woody branches. Well, my professionalism obviously kicked in, and I calmly announced that I was a paramedic and I was there to help. The lady was simpering and said in a Scottish accent, Simon, absolutely
Go on.
no chance.
Go on.
No,
just try, just a
Is he
little
good
bit.
at accents?
He is just the best.
I
am,
Simon.
I
Go on,
am
Simon.
the best.
BAFTAs all over
why
the
don't we get
place.
producer Phil to say these lines?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, should we do that?
No, he's saying no. Anyway, in which case it's going to be done in a London accent. The lady was simpering and said in her newly discovered London accent, "There's an animal in those shrubs. It growled at me, and then I heard a yell." She continued wide-eyed, "I got such a fright, I ran and I fell in here." I managed to calm the lady down and even shone my torch into the bushes to reassure her that whatever it was that had frightened her, it was now gone. I assessed her injuries, but bar a few minor scratches, she was unharmed, and I managed to untangle her from the thick branches, much to her relief. She finally began to calm down and thanked me repeatedly for my assistance, even as I walked her across the road towards her car. I then returned to the ambulance station and never mentioned the incident to my colleague. He seemed perplexed that I seemed to have forgotten my chocolate. The next night, I was on night shift again, and shortly after clocking on the station, the doorbell rang. I went through to answer it, and to my horror, there stood the scared woman from the night before, holding a tin in her outstretched arms, which both had several small plasters on them. "This is for you," she said, "to thank you for helping me last night." Speechless, I opened the tin to find a large homemade chocolate cake with the words, "My hero," emblazoned in icing on the top. I stammered, "Oh, thank you so much, but you really shouldn't have." And after a couple of minutes of this woman saying how wonderful I was, we said goodbye. I shared the cake with my colleagues on the station and told them it was from a grateful patient, which I suppose was true. But I didn't have a slice, says Brian. In fact, to this day, every time I see a chocolate cake, I'm racked with guilt. So here I am seeking forgiveness from the poor woman who ended up with a ruined cardigan, ripped tights, and a dishevelled hairdo, all of which was my fault. However, I don't seek forgiveness from my colleague for my wind, because he ended up having 2 slices of the chocolate cake, so I think he's fine. Needless to say, I also now avoid parsnip soup, particularly before a night shift. Which you can imagine, if you're going to be in an enclosed space, you do have to think very carefully about what you're eating. Brian's confession, an intriguing one, and often when we get quite a few breaking wind confessions, very few of them end like that, however. Brian, thank you for your confession. Joe goes first.
Wow, a gassy kind of confession then.
Yes.
This is an extraordinary case of cowardice, I think, in the extreme. Brian, I mean, thank goodness he was a qualified medic for, sorting out the lady when she'd fallen into that bush. What kind of volume are we talking about here that would have scared her that much that she leapt into a bush?
It must have been substantial, mustn't it?
She thought it was an animal, a lion, roaring probably. So I don't think I can possibly forgive him, even though he did walk her across the road and was something of a gent. But, the cowardice and deceit that went into this, really.
Okay, so that's a no.
Not forgiven.
It's a no from Joe. What do we get from Bobby?
Oh, well, it's an elephant in the bushes or something like that, maybe. You see, the thing is, I have a problem because Brian's a paramedic, and I just think if you're a paramedic, generally you're forgiven for everything because you're a paramedic. You turn up in the hours of people's worst times and you do your best to help. So almost, Brian, I can forgive you just because you're a paramedic. So basically you deserve everything. The parsnip soup is a mystery to me because I have no problems with parsnip soups. That's funny. But look, the thing is, there's no real losers. You went outside, which is a good thing to save your colleagues. Unfortunate that someone was walking by. You thought it was quiet. I don't think we really, really, really have to forgive you. I think you took the cake in good grace, which most of us would wish on you anyway. So you're forgiven.
But Bobby, my hero. It said my hero on the cake.
Yeah, but to her, you see, it was. So
can you imagine the conversation, though, of him just going, well, actually...
Yeah, well, you just couldn't, could you?
No.
You're forgiven on every single level.